So on this episode of Foster Denovo Talks, we're joined by Paul Hurley, our Director of Compliance. Paul talked to us about his career pre-Foster Denovo, where he was 13 years in the military, then how he joined compliance.
As many military people did, left around that time. I went into financial services, so I spent 9 years as a self-employed advisor, 2 years as an employed advisor.
His trajectory with Foster Denovo.
Interviewed for the business quality manager role with Roger and got that role, and the rest is history.
And what he thinks the future might hold for regulation and compliance within wealth management.
There's talk of crypto coming into the retail market. The FCA is viewing everything through the eyes of vulnerability. We've been on that journey since about 2018. There's still more to do.
So check it out. Hi Paul, welcome to Foster Denovo Talks.
Thank you very much.
So, Paul, let's start. Well, should we introduce you first? You are?
I'm Paul Hurley. I'm the Director of Compliance for Foster Denovo.
You absolutely are. So before we go into the extended career, and I won't do this the whole time, at Foster Denovo, tell us about your career before you joined Foster Denovo.
So I spent 13 years in the military. Then, as many military people did, left around that time. I went into financial services, so I spent 9 years as a self-employed advisor, 2 years as an employed advisor. Got a little bit bored with it, a little bit fed up with it, so decided to take a pay cut and move into compliance.
And I find this interesting that you got bored with being an advisor, and so you took a pay cut to go to compliance. This feels like the opposite way of doing things. I don't want to dress that up.
Yeah, well, you have to start somewhere, don't you? So I went down to the bottom of the compliance rung, shall we say. Okay.
And what drew you into compliance, though? Because it's not, I don't know, would we call it sexy?
I think it is. I think it's a broad subject.
Yeah.
So there's lots of different facets to it, and as opposed to just speaking to clients on a limited range of things, there's a whole lot of other things to do in compliance.
Okay. Do you want to expand on that? Like what, Paul? What were you doing when you first started?
So when I first started, I joined a firm called Barclay Berry Birch. And I went
say that again. That's
Barclay Berry Birch.
Lovely.
And I went into their file review team, actually. So I spent a couple of years in their file review team, just learning compliance, basically, looking at files, reviewing files, and then moved into managing the training and competence team.
Okay. And I would just want to say it, Barclay Berry Birch. So when did you get to meet Roger, Foster Denovo? How did that career all take off? Because you were here before it was Foster Denovo. And I won't say how many years ago.
I wasn't. So 25 years ago, I joined Barclay Berry Birch.
Okay.
So I spent 5 years with them, and then Tenet bought them out. And Foster Denovo were an appointed rep of Tenet, basically. So I went into Tenet just on a TUPE. I was going to join the National Lottery in their compliance team. And
sounds exciting.
Yeah. Tenet said, would you go and do some work with our Weybridge office, a company called Foster Denovo? So I went down, stayed, and interviewed for the business quality manager role with Roger, and got that role, and the rest is history.
Okay, so the rest being history, tell me about that history, because you've had quite the trajectory at Foster Denovo. You're now the Director of Compliance. So how did you move up through the different areas and businesses? And then what is it that you're doing now or overseeing as the Director of Compliance?
So I think a lot of it has got to do, as everybody will probably tell you, where you want to go, what you want to get out of it. And to do that, I think you've got to be armed with all of the information. So I think education's key. And I carried on with my normal qualifications, financial services qualifications. I extended out to other qualifications that I thought would help. I had experience of teaching in colleges. And so the T&C, the training and competence function, lends itself to training. So I naturally inherited as well the role of been in charge of the training, organising all the training for the guys. That expanded through. And then when Helen Lovett took on the SMF 16 role, she asked me to manage the compliance team. So I do the daily management of all of the compliance team. That's what the role involves. I don't hold the compliance regulatory function, thankfully. Helen still keeps that. I do have the money laundering reporting function. But yeah, I try to keep things going.
Okay. And for people that don't fully understand, because compliance covers such a raft of things now, and especially in, wealth management in particular, when we're so regulated. So what does, and you've got a few teams really, haven't you? So what do they all cover?
Yeah, it is a broad spectrum. So we have the normal compliance functions, if that's how you'd like to look at it.
I'm not sure I call normal and compliance.
Reporting to the FCA. We have a pre-approval function within the team that looks and checks business before it actually goes out to clients. We've got, as I've mentioned, the business quality team who are there for the training and competence function. So they're ensuring that the guys are competent in the role that they do. And we have the quality assurance team. So the quality assurance team check all of the business that it comes on. And the idea for that is before we actually put it onto the system, before it goes and we don't see it again, hopefully, it's just if we do see it again because a complaint has gone in or we need to provide information to the FCA, we've got all of the relevant documents. They've all been checked. Okay.
And compliance, and I say this kindly, has a reputation, doesn't it, within wealth management, within financial services, etc. Do you think that has changed over the last sort of 20 years since you've been in it?
I think the regulators changed, which has probably drove the way that compliance is looked at. So, what do I mean by that? Back in the early days, before you were born, probably.
Lovely, thank you.
The before the FCA, it was a very, very rule-based focused regime. From a compliance perspective, extremely easy to operate because you know what you should be doing and what you shouldn't be doing. The FCA came in really with a principle-based approach, and that has got more and more as time has gone on, and that does blur a little bit about trying to show what's meant. It's all outcome based now. That's the key, So I always used to like to say it's a little bit like baking a cake. So the FCA aren't particularly bothered about what ingredients you put in and what way you put the ingredients in. They want to taste the cake and make sure it doesn't poison anyone. So it's outcome based on the principles that they set down.
And how do you think that relates then to, how the advisors are working? Because it's definitely felt, I would say, in the last 3 or 4 years that it's been much more compliance driven. We've had consumer duty, we've had all of these different things coming in. How are we getting that to work with our advisors when they don't feel like they're just being inundated with more and more regulation?
Yeah, I'd probably go back further than that, really. I mean, 2013, we had RDR come through. So that was a complete change for us. Anybody that was in Foster Denovo pre-RDR would have felt the change and seen the change. As well, of course, a lot of them had to get qualified. We then, if you're in the mortgage side, we had MCOB, which changed the mortgage regulation and put a lot more regulation on mortgage partners. We had MiFID, which was a massive change in 2018, a European rules really, which we struggled with a lot of them because we operate different to the EU. So again, some rub with the partners just trying to get around the rules and what they actually meant. Moving forward, consumer duty is probably the biggest change of this decade so far.
And how do you think partners have dealt with this?
In some aspects, it's been there is no choice. That's it's the FCA's football. If you don't like it, then I'll take it away. So that can make the way that we introduce it challenging. So what we've always tried to do is to involve partners. So we have working groups, as you're aware, We get groups of partners together and sort of say, look, this is the rule. This is how we're planning on meeting it. What do you think? Everybody has their say, and then we have to go away and find a way of implementing it.
And I think that is key, isn't it? I think, and especially with consumer duty and talking to people outside of the business and inside, we spent a long time consulting with the partners and making sure that they understood and would it work for them and all that side of stuff. Whereas I think a lot of firms externally, just compliance either came in or they had external compliance and they just went, right, these are the rules. This is what you have to do now. And it was just a complete shift overnight, basically. So whether our partners thank us for all of the consulting we do with them is a different matter. But I do think that is one of the things that we do try and do all the time, isn't it?
Yeah, we do. It does make life more difficult, without a doubt. From a compliance perspective, it is probably the hardest way to introduce change because everybody's got their own views and everybody's adding into it. The reality is experienced financial advisors bring a hell of a lot to the table when you invite them to give those views. So it's really good. But of course, if you've got 30 different people giving 30 different views, you're going to upset somebody and please others. So it is a challenge. Yeah,
and it's a challenge that we take on, don't we? But it can be some hard work. So you obviously work with, very closely on the acquisitions that we do, which obviously has been happening over the last couple of years. So, and you're heavily involved in the due diligence, which I know you love.
I do.
Yeah, I thought so. So how is, when you look at an acquisitions, what differences do you see between their compliance and ours? And bearing in mind that usually, our firm is, 450 people now, and the acquisitions that we're doing are much, much smaller. So where do you see the differences?
I think just to step back a little bit and look at some of the work that we do, part of the role is to be looking at all of the FCA rules, policy statements. We look at FOS, we look at what PI are saying to us. And so we try to build an understanding to keep on top of things all the time. That is massively difficult for a small firm. What we usually find is that the director of the firm, the leading advisor, they tend to be have the compliance function, the SMF 16 and the MLRO function. And of course, they're trying to make a living as well. So it is a challenge for them. We recognise the challenge. It's probably a lot easier in a small firm to get away and to consider how you implement change. And that's probably the biggest difference, I think. We see firms that have got external compliance support, and they make changes and they recommend changes to them. So that's all good. Whether they carry it through all the time, again, that's something they need to consider.
Yeah, and I think that's what we do see. Most of them do have external compliance coming in for them, don't they, and helping them out. And then, of course, sort of we sort of come over, and then we've got our compliance as well. So it can be some tension around it sometimes, but we obviously make the best out of that. How do you think advisors experience compliance now? Is there still a friction? Is there a tension? And let's be honest.
I mean, when you sort of say advisors, it tends to be the person at the time. So, an individual will have something at the time, whether it's they want to write a specific piece of business that we don't think meets the requirements, whether it's they're trying to chase through a complaint that a client has made. So it's not all partners all the time. I'm not inundated with all partners knocking on my door.
Just rallying at you.
Yeah, but there may well be one or two partners a week that sort of are coming and looking for guidance or not quite sure as to that they agree with us. So, I think the majority of partners recognise what we do, recognise the job we do, and I mean, at the end of the day, we're just doing it to try and keep them and Foster Denovo safe.
No, and I do think our compliance department definitely has a good relationship with the advisors, and there's always some tension, isn't there, if something's not happening quick enough or whatever. But that's life, isn't it? And that's, as you say, in a heavily regulated world, we're trying to keep them safe, the firm safe, and and, you know, you and Helen out of jail. So
Definitely.
yeah, that's what we'd like to do, right? So big question, big finale for you, okay? So what's next for regulation?
Regulation.
Yeah.
What's next for regulation? I think there's talk of crypto
Okay.
coming into the retail market. It won't be the FCA, I don't think. I mean, I don't know, but I don't think it will be the FCA allowing the purchase of Bitcoins, for example, you know, or advising on Bitcoins. I think it will be more like it's not an ETF, but more like an ETF type fund of Bitcoin will potentially be allowed. That'll bring its own challenges because the client can lose everything. So, you know, we need to think of how that works. There's no doubt that the government have very clearly stated to the FCA that they need to focus on growth. So that will certainly be some changes. There's more views on the recent review, the annual review process, which I think a lot of advisors have probably thought they may have got away with, as it were, doing back book reviews and that. The general
Well, there's
feel
been
is
so
that's
much,
not going to
hasn't
happen.
there? Yeah.
That hasn't gone away. Areas such as pensions, very big at the moment. And of course, vulnerability, the FCA is viewing everything through the eyes of vulnerability. So we've been on that journey since about 2018. We you know, there's still more to do.
And didn't you tell me, I think you gave me a stat the other day that the FCA have quoted that they think that 50%, is this right? 50% of the population is vulnerable at any one time?
Yeah, 49%, they say.
All right now.
I can only commend you. That's from their latest Financial Lives survey that they do. They tend to do them on a regular basis and ask lots and lots of different questions. So, you know, I think any of the partners looking at this will go, there's no way 49% of our clients are vulnerable. Well, that's probably true, but you look across the whole of the UK, we have certainly got vulnerable clients. Every single partner in our firm's got vulnerable clients. But, you know, some of the stats that I gave you, I think it was 18% of people have literacy skills issues, 19% struggle with numeracy. And when you think that we then produce a suitability report that is X pages long with lots and lots of just words, that's not the way to approach it, really. You know, we need to think of the way that we communicate with partners, which we've been doing in fairness for a while and continue to do.
Yeah, no, we absolutely have. And we've done a lot of work on that vulnerability piece, haven't we? Okay, I am going to do the final question now. I sort of pre-prepped it there. What's next for Paul Hurley?
Retirement.
Not yet, though.
You asked.
Don't walk out and retire, Paul. I don't want that to happen.
No, so my retirement, in fairness, was planned for 3 years ago.
Okay,
so,
lovely. Great.
Helen and Roger sort of, I don't know, I just love working in this firm, to be quite honest with you. So I realised I'm not ready to retire. So I think the next stage as we move through over the next year or two is going to be really exciting. But I'm probably going to have to hang up my compliance hat in a year or two.
That makes me very sad inside, Paul. And on that note, thank you very much for joining us.